Okay, so I've just jumped out of the shower, and shower's my thinking space. And so I done some thinking, and I wanted to talk about it before I forget about it. I was thinking about the difference, like how there is such a discrepancy between the number of little boys who are diagnosed with ADHD and the number of little girls who are diagnosed with ADHD. There's, the thing behind it, I think, is that it presents itself quite differently in girls compared to boys. So the kids who I went to school with who had been diagnosed based on the understanding of ADHD back in the day were all boys. There weren't any girls. And that doesn't mean that there weren't any girls with ADHD. It just means that people weren't looking out for girl symptoms. Anyway, so I was thinking about that, and about some of that is obviously wiring, how girls and boys are wired differently, but also some of that has got to be around social norms and what our culture says is okay for boys and girls, and what's normal, and how girls learn different compensatory behaviours. So it got me thinking, what was it like? Because I have a boy and a girl, and both of them are very much like me in lots and lots of ways. They both have had a lot of similar traits when they were really, really little. And I was thinking back, I was like, search my memory. Okay, how was it different? I've done this noticing before, but the response to both my kids' behaviours in their early, toddlerhood days, same behaviours, social responses have been quite different. So I think we just accept little boys being a bit more hyperactive and mischief and crazy, running around and high energy people. Well, when I say we, I have tried so hard not to do that not to expect differently from my kids than what they are at the time, when they're little especially. But socially, the number of people who said things, about my daughter, she's number 2, when I never got those comments about my son with similar behaviours. So, for example, my son hijacked a manually operated elevator one time at home. When I say at home, sorry, we lived in 2J at the time. And he up and down. There was a bunch of people up here trying to get him out, and a bunch of people down here trying to get him out, and he was losing it, laughing, going back and forth between. I was running up and down the stairs trying to get him out. He wouldn't listen. He was on his own adventure, and everyone was loving it, and he had 2 adoring audiences, and he was just going between and making them laugh, and loved it. Okay, everybody had a great time. I didn't, but everybody else had a great time. And the responses were, oh, what a mischief, how cute he is, etc., etc. I can't think of a specific event or activity, let's call it an activity, that my daughter did, but she displayed all the same behaviours. She's always been a think about it, do it kind of kid. And I have, since she was little, got all of these comments from people like, you better break her of that. How are you going to break her of that? And that enraged me, by the way. And, looking at her traits and going, how are you going to handle that? Whereas with my son, there was a lot more isn't he a mischief? So it really makes me sad that, and as a result, I know that certainly I, as a child, being hard to handle, I'm sure that I would have felt kids feel this. They feel the expectations on them. There's been a lot of research to show that kids, people, anyone, behave to the silent expectations of the person in front of them. Oh my goodness, studies on rats it's not just people, by the way, it's animals. There's a study where they had a whole bunch of rats, all exactly the same, but they put them in different labelled cages. So some of them were labelled smart rats and some of them were labelled normal rats. And a bunch of student studiers were brought in to perform a study on the rats. And it was like a maze thing. And they had to map or like record how quickly the rats got to the end of the maze. The group of people who had the smart rats, which were no different to the other rats, those rats performed like something like 50% better than the normal rats, but there was no difference. The only difference in the study was the expectations of the people running the study. So there is something in the way we interact with, we let them do a bit more for themselves, or so I don't know what it is, but there's something in the way we interact with people, animals, everything. If we have expectations or acceptances of parts of them, that changes the way they behave. And so I really think that this whole idea, this social idea that boys are just a mischief and they're a bundle of energy and girls often aren't, and therefore kids feel those expectations. And this is part of the reason that I think, this is part of me theorising, little girls don't display the same level of hyperactivity and crazy things like crazy actions that boys do in primary school or even in high school, because they have learned that it's not acceptable and they have learned compensatory behaviours. Anyway, all that makes me sad. When I had my ADHD assessment, so for girls, it presents much more differently. Often girls are just much more talkative. They might not be good at focusing on the task as much, but they seem to be a bit more self-regulated. They have developed more greatly developed self-regulation skills. And it could be that girls are innately better at that and develop earlier, or it could be that social expectations have pressured them to do that. Anyway, I had to go back and look at my high school and primary school reports and try and find comments in there that might support me showing ADHD symptoms as a child. And I went back, I didn't realise it was a thing. I went back and there were hundreds of them. Like, no, there's not even hundreds of reports, come on. But there were a lot of comments about like, Kristen needs to stop talking. Kristen needs to focus on her task and not talk to other people. Kristen needs to stop getting distracted. Kristen needs to stop talking. Kristen needs to stop talking. So I was showing signs, but they were different to what the signs would have been in young boys showing ADHD. Anyway, these are thinkings. I want to be a little bit more open-minded with my kids in how I approach them, and I hope that other people start looking for ADHD in young girls, but also start allowing young girls to be who they are more. The end.